Admiral stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the stars shift as his fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel. 50 warships appeared in the empty space of the 442 system, like metal sharks emerging from dark water. The Admiral's 4 eyes scanned the tactical display with satisfaction. "Target analysis complete, Admiral," his tactical officer reported. The young scales rippled with excitement. 3 mining colonies on the inner planets, 1 defense platform orbiting the second world, no sign of major military presence. Nodded his massive head. His species had conquered dozens of systems using the same proven strategy: strike fast at weak targets, force the enemy to choose between costly defense and smart retreat. Most species chose retreat, those who didn't usually wish they had. "What about their fleet strength?" asked. "Minimal, sir. 15 vessels detected. Most appear to be converted cargo ships, a few patrol boats, nothing that matches our firepower." The tactical officer paused. "Sir, this appears to be exactly what our scouts reported. A frontier system with more resources than defenses." The fleet had been expanding their territory for 3 centuries. They were skilled warriors who understood that war was about knowing when to advance and when to pull back. Smart enemies recognized superior force and negotiated. Stupid enemies fought and died quickly. Either way, they usually got what they wanted without losing many ships. Humans were new to this part of the galaxy. Their rapid expansion had worried several older species, but they saw opportunity. These newcomers needed to learn how things worked. A quick demonstration would teach them proper respect. "Signal the fleet," ordered. "Standard formation. We approach their defense line and offer terms. When they see our strength, they'll likely withdraw to avoid losses." The warships moved forward like a metal storm. Each ship was twice the size of the largest human vessel. Their weapons could punch through asteroid belts. Their armor could withstand direct hits from military-grade plasma cannons. As they approached the inner system, the human ships began moving. Expected them to form up near their colonies, maybe try to buy time for evacuation. Instead, the humans did something strange. They spread out in a loose line between the fleet and their worlds. "Interesting," muttered. "They're not clustering for mutual defense. Are they planning to run?" "No, sir," his sensor officer called out. "They're holding position, and Admiral, I'm detecting weapons charging on all human vessels." Scales darkened with confusion. 15 ships against 50. The humans had to see this was hopeless. Maybe they were buying time for reinforcements, but his scouts had confirmed this was an isolated frontier system. The communication officer looked up from his station. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the humans." "Put it through." The main screen flickered, showing a human female in a military uniform. Her species looked fragile compared to the armored, but her eyes held no fear. Behind her, could see other humans working at control stations with calm efficiency. "This is Commander Lisa Park of the Defense Force," the human said. Her voice was steady and cold. "You have entered human space without permission. Leave now, or we will make you leave." Stared at the screen for a moment before laughing. The sound echoed through his bridge, and his crew joined in. The idea that 15 small ships could make 50 warships do anything was absurd. "Human Commander," replied, "I am Admiral of the Confederation. You are clearly outnumbered and we claim this system by right of superior force. Withdraw your ships and we will allow you to evacuate your colonies. Refuse and we will destroy you." The human commander's expression didn't change. "Admiral, you seem to have misunderstood. This is human space. You are not welcome here. Last warning." Some amusement faded. "Commander, look at your tactical display. You cannot win this fight. Your people will die for nothing." "Maybe," the human said, "but you'll have to kill every last one of us to take this system. And Admiral, we're going to make you pay for every meter." The transmission ended. Stared at the blank screen in disbelief. He had fought dozens of species across the galaxy. Some were brave, some were cowardly, but all were smart enough to recognize hopeless odds. This human commander had looked at 50 warships and essentially declared war. "Sir," his tactical officer said quietly, "what are your orders?" "Activated the fleet channel. All ships prepare for engagement. These humans want to die for their colonies. We'll grant their wish. Target their largest vessels first." The space between the fleets erupted in light and fire. Plasma beams lanced out across the darkness, striking human ships that responded with missiles and energy weapons. The battle was exactly what had expected, except for one thing. The humans didn't break. When the converted cargo ship, New Seattle, lost its main engines, instead of drifting away from the fight, it continued firing until its ammunition ran out. When Marines tried to board it, the human crew fought them room by room with hand weapons. When the patrol boat Liberty Bell found itself surrounded by 3 cruisers, instead of surrendering, it rammed the nearest enemy ship and exploded in a nuclear fireball that took the cruiser with it. When the defense platform was finally overwhelmed, instead of surrendering or trying to evacuate, the humans activated its self-destruct system. The explosion destroyed 3 more ships that had moved in too close. By the time the last human ship went dark, was staring at his casualty reports in shock. 15 human ships had destroyed or badly damaged 20 vessels. His fleet was still intact, but barely. "Admiral," his sensor officer called out, "long-range scanners are detecting multiple faster-than-light signatures approaching our position." "How many?" "Over 100, sir. Large formations from multiple directions." Felt ice form in his stomach. "Military vessels." "Mixed signatures, Admiral. Warships, cargo vessels, civilian ships. It looks like an entire battle fleet supported by logistics and construction vessels." The Admiral stared at his tactical display as the reality hit him. The humans hadn't been defending just this system. They had been buying time for the largest military response he had ever seen. "Sir," his communication officer said, "should I signal the approaching fleet and offer to negotiate?" Looked at the wreckage floating around his ships. 15 humans had cost him 15 ships and nearly 1,000 crew members. What would 100 human ships cost him? "No," he said quietly. "Prepare defensive positions. I think we're about to learn something new about humans." The human fleet arrived like an angry storm. Admiral Sarah stood on the bridge of the heavy cruiser Indomitable, watching her tactical display fill with friendly contacts. 137 ships had answered the call from 442, everything from frontline warships to converted luxury liners carrying Marines. "Admiral," her operations officer reported, "the fleet is holding position around the inner planets. They've formed a defensive sphere around their captured territories." Nodded grimly. The reports from Commander Park's final transmission had been clear. They had won the battle but lost far more ships than expected. Now they were waiting to see what the human response would be. "What's our force composition?" asked. 42 military vessels, including 6 heavy cruisers and 12 destroyers. The rest are support ships, but most have been fitted with additional weapons and armor. We also have 8 mobile construction platforms and enough supplies to establish permanent bases. Smiled without humor. They probably expected a straight military assault to retake the system. They were about to learn that humans thought differently about warfare. "Signal the fleet," she ordered. "We're not approaching 442 directly. Set course for the 7 system. We're going to build some infrastructure." Her staff exchanged glances. Commander Williams, her tactical officer, cleared his throat. "Admiral, 7 is 2 systems away from our target. Shouldn't we engage the enemy directly?" "Commander," said, pulling up a star map, "they think this is about 1 system. They're wrong. This is about making sure they never threaten human space again. We're not just taking back. We're making sure this problem never happens twice." The human fleet jumped away from the system, leaving the confused and waiting. Admiral watched them leave and felt a moment of relief. Maybe the humans were being smart after all. Maybe they would negotiate. 3 days later, he realized how wrong he was. The humans hadn't retreated. They had built a military base in 7 that could support 50 ships. Long-range scanners showed construction platforms working around the clock, building weapons platforms, supply depots, and communication relays. "Admiral," his intelligence officer reported, "the humans are also building similar installations in 4 other systems surrounding our position." Studied the tactical map with growing alarm. The humans weren't just building random bases. They were creating a network of fortified positions that would control all space lanes in and out of the region. If this continued, the fleet would be completely surrounded. "Sir," his communication officer said, "Admiral is requesting to speak with you." The main screen activated, showing a middle-aged human woman with gray streaking her dark hair. Unlike Commander Park's desperate last stand, this human looked calm and confident. "Admiral," she said, "I'm Admiral Sarah, commanding the Human Response Force. I believe you have something that belongs to us." Admiral replied, "I am prepared to discuss reasonable terms for this system. We can certainly reach an agreement that benefits both our species." His expression didn't change. "Admiral, I think you misunderstand the situation. There will be no negotiation. There will be no agreement. You attacked human civilians and killed human defenders. That makes this a law enforcement operation, not a diplomatic discussion." Felt his scales ripple with confusion. "Law enforcement. Admiral, this is warfare between military forces. Surely we can find terms that minimize further losses." "Let me explain something to you," continued. "When you crossed into human space with weapons active, you committed an act of piracy and murder. Pirates don't get to negotiate. They get eliminated." The Admiral stared at the screen. In his experience, warfare was about gaining advantage and finding favorable terms. Species fought until one side gained enough leverage to negotiate a better deal. This human seemed to be talking about something completely different. "Admiral," he said carefully, "we are both military officers. Surely you understand the realities of interstellar conflict. We can arrange a ceasefire, perhaps discuss compensation for damages." Interrupted him. "Admiral, you keep using words like negotiation and ceasefire. I don't think those words mean what you think they mean. A ceasefire is what you call a pause between equals. This isn't a war between equals. This is pest control." The transmission ended, leaving staring at a blank screen. Over the following weeks, the situation became clearer and more terrifying. The humans weren't building temporary forward bases. They were building permanent installations designed to last centuries. They brought in civilian contractors, terraforming equipment, and long-term supplies. Every time they tried to send scouts toward human territory, they found new weapons platforms and patrol fleets. The humans weren't just defending their original borders. They were expanding them, claiming every system that had ever shown interest in. "Sir," his strategic advisor said during a staff meeting, "our intelligence suggests the humans are not planning a direct assault on our position." "Then what are they planning?" asked. "They appear to be building a permanent containment grid around us. Our analysts believe they intend to simply wait until we run out of supplies." Looked at his resource reports. The fleet had enough food and fuel for perhaps 6 months of active operations. The humans could apparently build bases faster than he could destroy them. "What about reinforcements from our home territory?" "The humans have established patrol networks along all major space lanes. Any relief force would have to fight through multiple fortified positions to reach us." The Admiral felt something he had never experienced in 3 decades of warfare: helplessness. The military doctrine was based on mobility, striking fast and pulling back to prepared positions when necessary. But the humans had taken away his ability to maneuver. "Sir," his communication officer announced, "Admiral is transmitting again." The human admiral appeared on screen, but this time she was standing in what looked like a construction bay. Behind her, could see workers building what appeared to be a massive space station. "Admiral said, I thought you might like to see what we're building in the Wolf 359 system. This is fire-based determination. When complete, it will house 10,000 personnel and support a fleet of 200 ships." Stared in horror. Wolf 359 was deep in what had been neutral space just weeks ago. "We're also building similar installations in 12 other systems," continued. "By the time we're finished, human space will extend 50 light-years beyond your current position. Of course, you won't be around to see it completed." Admiral found his voice. "What do you want?" Smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "What do I want? I want to make sure that no species ever again makes the mistake you made. I want every alien government in this region to understand that attacking humans has permanent consequences." The transmission ended again, leaving the Admiral alone with the terrible realization that he had started something he could not stop, could not negotiate away, and could not win. The humans weren't fighting a war. They were solving a problem, and they clearly intended to solve it permanently. 2 months after the humans had arrived, Admiral was learning that nothing in his military training had prepared him for fighting this species. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "our raid on the 7 base was unsuccessful. We destroyed 2 construction platforms and damaged a supply depot, but the humans have already begun rebuilding. More concerning, sir, they've established 3 new weapons platforms in response." Stared at the tactical display in growing frustration. Every attack seemed to make the situation worse. In traditional warfare, successful raids weakened the enemy and created opportunities for negotiation. The humans treated each attack as justification for building more defenses. "What about our attempt to break out toward the Vega system?" he asked. "Also unsuccessful, sir. The human patrol fleet engaged our advance force and forced us to withdraw. But Admiral," the officer paused, "the humans didn't just drive us back. They followed our retreat vector and built a new base in the Altair system to cut off that approach route." 4 eyes closed in despair. The humans weren't just defending territory. Every action resulted in human expansion. Attack a base and they built 2 more. Try to break out and they built another wall. His strategic advisor approached with the latest intelligence reports. "Sir, we've been monitoring human communications. Their high command has designated our entire region as what they call a contaminated zone. They're treating our presence like a disease that must be contained and eliminated." "Disease," repeated. "Yes, sir. Their admiral has been quoted as saying that aggressive alien species represent a permanent threat that cannot be negotiated away. She's convinced her government that the only solution is what they term territorial sterilization." The admiral felt his scales turn pale. "Are they planning to destroy our worlds?" "No, sir. They're planning to claim them. The humans are building infrastructure to support permanent occupation of every system we've ever shown interest in. They're not fighting to defeat us. They're fighting to replace us." A junior officer at the communication station looked up nervously. "Admiral, we're receiving a general broadcast from Admiral. She's transmitting on all frequencies." "Put it through." The main screen showed standing in what appeared to be a command center filled with tactical displays. Behind her, dozens of human officers worked at control stations, managing what looked like a massive military operation. "This is Admiral Sarah addressing all forces in the occupied 442 system," she began. "I'm transmitting this message to explain why your situation will only continue to deteriorate." She gestured to a star map that appeared beside her. Large portions of it were colored in human blue, showing the expanding network of bases and defenses. For the past 8 weeks, you've attempted various military actions against human positions. Each attack has been repelled, but more importantly, each attack has demonstrated that you continue to represent a threat to human civilians. Therefore, each attack has resulted in expanded human defensive positions. Watched in horror as the map showed time-lapse footage of human expansion. Every raid or probe was followed by new human bases appearing further out from their original territory. You see, continued, your species thinks in terms of tactical advantage and strategic withdrawal. You attack, you retreat, you regroup, you negotiate. But humans think differently. When someone threatens us, we don't just push them back. We make sure they can never threaten us again. The map zoomed in to show the growing ring of human installations surrounding the fleet. Every system you've ever scouted is now under human control. Every route you might use to retreat is blocked by human bases. We're not trying to defeat you in battle, Admiral. We're making sure the threat you represent is permanently eliminated. Found his voice. Admiral, we can discuss terms. The Confederation is prepared to offer significant compensation for damages and guarantee non-aggression agreements. His expression didn't change. Admiral, you still don't understand. This isn't about compensation or agreements. When you attacked our civilians, you demonstrated that your species is willing to use violence against peaceful settlements. No treaty will change that fundamental aspect of your nature. She gestured to another display showing massive construction projects. We're not building temporary military bases, Admiral. We're building permanent colonies. Human families are already moving into some of these systems. By the time we're finished, there will be 50 million humans living in the territory that used to be on your borders. The transmission continued for another 10 minutes, with calmly explaining the human strategy. They weren't fighting a war in any sense that they understood. They were engaging in what they called preemptive territorial expansion to eliminate future threats. When the broadcast ended, Bridge was silent. His officers stared at their displays, trying to process what they had heard. Sir, his strategic advisor said quietly, if Admiral is telling the truth, they're not planning to stop with containing us. They're planning to claim everything within 100 light-years of their original borders. How is that possible? Asked. Their industrial capacity, sir. Our scouts report that they're bringing in massive construction fleets, automated mining platforms, terraforming equipment, civilian construction teams. They're not just building military bases. They're building entire civilizations. Studied the tactical display showing human positions. In 2 months, they had built more permanent infrastructure than most species managed in decades. But more disturbing was the pattern of their expansion. They're not building randomly, he realized. Every base is positioned to support the next one. They're creating a supply network that will let them continue expanding indefinitely. His communication officer looked up from her station. Admiral, we're receiving signals from the Confederation High Command. They're asking for a status report. Considered what to tell them. How do you explain to a military government that you've encountered a species that doesn't fight wars the way everyone else does? How do you report that the humans see every conflict as a problem requiring permanent solution? Tell them, he said finally, that we need immediate evacuation for the fleet. Tell them that we've encountered a species that doesn't retreat, doesn't negotiate, and doesn't stop advancing once they've decided you're a threat. Sir, his tactical officer interrupted, long-range sensors are detecting another human construction fleet approaching. This one appears to be even larger than the previous ones. Watched the sensor readings with growing dread. The new fleet included ships he'd never seen before. Massive vessels that looked like mobile factories and what appeared to be civilian colony ships. Admiral, his intelligence officer said, studying the new contacts, those aren't military vessels. The humans are bringing in families. They're planning to populate this entire region permanently. For the first time in his career, Admiral understood what it meant to face an enemy that viewed warfare not as a tool of diplomacy, but as a method of problem-solving. The humans had decided that aggressive alien species were a problem, and their solution was to make sure no aggressive aliens could exist within striking distance of human space. The most terrifying part was that it was working. The message from the High Council arrived 3 months after the first human ship had appeared in the region. Admiral read it twice before calling his senior staff to the briefing room. "The Council has ordered a full strategic withdrawal," he announced to the assembled officers. "All forces are to abandon the system and return to Confederation space immediately." His officers looked relieved for the first time in months. Commander K, his second in command, leaned forward eagerly. "Admiral, do we have authorization to negotiate safe passage with the humans?" "The Council believes," said carefully, "that withdrawing our forces will demonstrate peaceful intent and allow for diplomatic resolution of this conflict." Around the table, his staff nodded. This made sense according to traditional military thinking. When an operation became too costly, you to minimize losses and open negotiations from a position of reduced threat. "Sir," his tactical officer asked, "what about the human response? Have they indicated willingness to accept our withdrawal?" Had been dreading this question. "We haven't contacted them yet. The Council ordered us to simply withdraw and assume they would allow it." The room fell silent. Everyone present had been fighting the humans for months. The idea that Admiral would simply allow them to leave seemed optimistic at best. 2 hours later, the fleet began moving away from the inner planets of the system. Expected immediate human response, either an attack or demands for negotiations. Instead, the human ships simply watched them go. "Admiral," his sensor operator reported, "the humans are allowing us to withdraw. No signs of pursuit." For a brief moment, felt hope. Maybe the humans were more reasonable than he had thought. Maybe they would accept the return to previous borders and everyone could return to normal diplomatic relations. Then his long-range scanners began picking up massive fleet movements throughout human space. "Sir," his intelligence officer called out, "we're detecting major human fleet deployments in at least 20 systems. They appear to be moving forces toward our withdrawal route." Studied the tactical display with growing alarm. The humans weren't pursuing his fleet directly, but they were positioning massive forces along every possible path back to space. "Are they planning to attack us during withdrawal?" Commander K asked. Before could answer, his communication officer announced an incoming transmission from Admiral. The human Admiral appeared on the main screen, and for the first time in their communications, she was smiling. "Admiral," she said, "I see you're withdrawing from the system. That's very wise of you." "Admiral," replied carefully, "we are returning to Confederation space. We hope this will demonstrate our peaceful intentions and allow for diplomatic discussions." Nodded. "Oh, I'm sure your intentions are peaceful now. The problem is, your intentions could change again later, and we've decided that's unacceptable." "I don't understand." "Let me explain," said, gesturing to a star map that appeared beside her. "Your fleet withdrawing is excellent news. It means we don't have to dig you out of defensive positions, but withdrawal isn't the same as problem resolution." The star map showed the fleet's planned route home, but also showed something else. Dozens of human fleets moving to intercept not just ships, but every major military installation along the way. "You see, Admiral, your species has demonstrated that it's willing to attack human civilians when it thinks it can get away with it. Withdrawing your fleet doesn't change that fundamental fact about your nature." Felt cold understanding wash over him. "Admiral, we are withdrawing from your territory. We pose no current threat." "No current threat," agreed. "But you'll always be a potential threat, and we've decided we don't want to wait around to see when you might decide to attack again." The display changed to show massive human construction fleets, moving toward every system that had ever occupied or shown interest in. "While you've been fighting us here," continued, "we've been building the infrastructure to permanently resolve the threat your species represents. Every world you might use as a base, every system you might launch attacks from, every strategic position that could support anti-human operations." Stared at the scope of the human operation. They weren't just responding to the current conflict. They were systematically claiming every piece of territory that could ever be used against them. "This is impossible," he said. "You're talking about controlling thousands of systems." "Difficult," corrected. "Not impossible. We've been building the industrial capacity for 3 months. Mobile shipyards, automated construction platforms, self-sufficient colony ships. By the time your fleet reaches Confederation space, there will be human installations in every system between your territory and ours." "Admiral," said desperately, "this level of expansion will threaten dozens of other species. You'll start wars with half the galaxy." Smile faded. "Admiral, let me ask you something. Before you attacked 442, how many other species had you raided? How many worlds had you claimed through force?" Remain silent. "Our intelligence says the Confederation has used military force to claim territory from at least 8 different species in the past century. Did any of those species threaten you first, or did you attack them because they seemed weak?" That's different. Those were legitimate territorial expansions." "I see, so when you do it, it's legitimate expansion. When we do it, it's unacceptable aggression." His voice turned cold. "Admiral, you're about to learn the difference between your approach and ours." The display changed again, showing detailed views of human construction projects. "When your species expands, you take what you want and move on. When humans expand, we stay. Every system we claim will be permanently settled with human families. Every base we build will be maintained for centuries. We're not taking territory, Admiral. We're solving the problem of aggressive neighbors." Tried once more. "Admiral, surely we can reach some agreement. The Confederation is prepared to offer massive reparations and binding non-aggression treaties." "Treaties?" laughed. "Admiral, you broke into human space with 50 warships. You killed human civilians. You think a treaty will change the fact that your species is capable of that?" "We could establish monitoring stations, regular inspections." "Or," interrupted, "we could simply make sure you don't have the capability to threaten anyone again. Which do you think is more reliable?" The transmission ended, leaving staring at a tactical display that showed the scope of human expansion. They weren't just building bases. They were building an empire that would stretch from human core worlds all the way to the edge of Confederation space. "Admiral," his strategic advisor said quietly, "if the humans follow through on this plan, they'll control every major trade route in this part of the galaxy. They'll be able to cut off our supply lines, monitor all our fleet movements, and block any attempt at territorial expansion." Nodded grimly. He was beginning to understand the true nature of the human response. They weren't fighting a war. They were performing surgery, removing what they saw as a dangerous threat from the galaxy. "Signal the fleet," he ordered. "Maximum speed toward Confederation space, and send a priority message to the High Council. Tell them we need to begin immediate evacuation of all border systems." "Evacuation, sir." "The humans aren't going to stop with military installations. They're going to claim everything within reach of our space. Our choice is evacuation or conquest." As his fleet jumped toward home, realized the terrible irony of their situation. They had attacked the humans to demonstrate their strength and expand their territory. Instead, they had triggered the largest human expansion in their species' history. They had tried to take one system and lost half their empire. The final confrontation came 6 months after Admiral had first jumped into the system. His fleet, reduced to 30 ships after months of skirmishes and supply shortages, found itself completely surrounded in what had once been neutral space. Human bases now dotted every system for 50 light-years in all directions. The careful network of installations had grown into a massive fortress chain that controlled all movement in and out of the region. His fleet hung in empty space between two human battle groups, with nowhere left to run. "Admiral," his communication officer announced, "Admiral is requesting to speak with you." Straightened his uniform and activated the main display. Appeared on screen, but she was no longer on a ship's bridge. Behind her, he could see what looked like a massive space station with observation windows showing civilian areas, shopping districts, and families walking through well-lit corridors. Admiral said, "Welcome to Firebase Determination. Completed ahead of schedule, currently home to 15,000 humans, with room for 50,000 more." Stared at the background. "You built a city. In 6 months you built an entire city in space." "One of 12, replied calmly. "We've found that permanent civilian settlements are much more effective than military bases for long-term territorial control. Hard to argue with property rights when there are actual families living somewhere." Admiral said, his voice tired, "What do you want from us? Our fleet is surrounded. Our home systems are cut off. Just tell me what you want." Studied him for a long moment. "Admiral, I don't think you understand what's happening here. This isn't a negotiation. You don't have anything I want." "Then what is this?" "This is the end of a problem," gestured toward the observation windows behind her. 6 months ago, your species demonstrated that it was willing to attack human civilians. Today, your species no longer has the capability to threaten anyone." Felt his scales turn pale. "What do you mean?" "I mean we've spent 6 months systematically dismantling your civilization's ability to project military force. Every shipyard is now within range of human weapons. Every major population center is monitored by human surveillance. Every trade route passes through human-controlled space." The display changed to show a map of local space. What had once been a complex web of territories controlled by various species was now dominated by a massive blue region labeled Human Security Zone. "Admiral," continued, "your High Council has been trying to contact other species for military support. Did you know that?" Remained silent. 3 different species have considered forming an alliance against human expansion. But then they saw what happened to you, and they decided cooperation was preferable to conflict. It's amazing how reasonable people become when they understand the alternatives. "You're talking about conquering the entire region." "I'm talking about solving problems permanently." His voice hardened. "For 300 years, your species has expanded through violence. You attacked weaker neighbors, claimed their territory, and moved on to the next target. Did you think that would continue forever?" "We were following standard territorial expansion protocols." "You were pirates," interrupted. "Successful pirates, but pirates nonetheless. And now the neighborhood has decided to do something permanent about the piracy problem." Found his voice again. "Admiral, please, we can negotiate. The Confederation is prepared to accept any terms." Shook her head. "Admiral, you still don't understand. There are no terms because there's nothing to negotiate. When you attacked our civilians, you demonstrated something fundamental about your species' nature. Treaties won't change that nature. Agreements won't eliminate the threat you represent." "But we can change," said desperately. "We can become peaceful." "Can you?" asked. "Can your entire species suddenly develop a completely different approach to interstellar relations? Can you guarantee that no leader will ever again look at a weaker neighbor and decide to take what they want?" Opened his mouth to answer, then closed it. The question was impossible to answer because the answer was no. They were what they were. "That's what I thought," said quietly. Admiral, let me explain something about humans that your species never understood. We don't fight wars the way you do. The display showed images of human history. Cities rebuilt after disasters, damaged ecosystems restored, problems tackled with methodical determination. When you encounter a problem, you work around it. When humans encounter a problem, we solve it, permanently. We don't accept that some things just can't be fixed. Are you going to destroy us? Asked. Destroy you? No, Admiral. We're going to manage you. Gestured to another display showing what looked like a detailed administrative chart. Every world is now part of the human security zone. Your species will be allowed to maintain its culture, its government, even its military. But that military will never again be capable of threatening anyone outside your original territory. Stared at the administrative structure. It looked like the humans had planned every detail of governance under human oversight. You're making us a client state. We're making you safe, corrected. Safe for you and safe from you. Your people will prosper under human protection. You'll have access to human technology, human markets, human medical care. All you give up is the ability to attack your neighbors. And if we refuse? His expression didn't change. Admiral, look at your tactical display. You're surrounded by the largest fleet in galactic history, in the middle of a network of bases that can support military operations indefinitely. Your home worlds are blockaded by human ships. Your choice isn't between independence and subjugation. Your choice is between managed integration and extinction. The bridge fell silent as processed this. Everything the humans had built, every base and station and fleet, it had all been leading to this moment. They hadn't been fighting a war. They had been building the infrastructure to permanently solve what they saw as the problem. Why? He asked finally. Why go to such lengths? Other species have learned to avoid conflict with stronger neighbors. Smiled sadly. Because, Admiral, other species think like you do. They think in terms of temporary advantage, strategic withdrawal, acceptable losses. Humans think in terms of permanent solutions. She leaned forward, and her voice became almost gentle. When you attacked 442, you killed 300 human civilians, including 47 children. Did you think we would just forget that? Did you think we would accept that as the cost of doing business in a dangerous galaxy? Had no answer. Those children will never grow up, Admiral. Their parents will never see them again. And you did that because you thought humans would respond the way other species do. You thought we would negotiate. The display changed one final time, showing construction projects throughout human space. Massive ships designed not for war, but for building, creating, and settling. We don't negotiate with child killers, Admiral. We eliminate the threat they represent, permanently. The transmission ended, leaving alone with the terrible understanding of what his species had awakened. They had attacked what they thought was a typical spacefaring civilization and discovered something unprecedented. A species that viewed every conflict as a problem requiring permanent solution. The humans weren't conquerors. They were exterminators who had decided that aggressive alien species were pests to be managed rather than enemies to be defeated. As his ship powered down its weapons in formal surrender, realized the final, crushing irony. They had attacked human space to demonstrate their strength and expand their empire. Instead, they had triggered the largest expansion in human history and ensured that no species in this part of the galaxy would ever again have the freedom to choose war over peace. They had wanted to teach the humans a lesson about power. The humans had taught them something far more terrifying: the difference between fighting to win and fighting to solve problems forever.